We got breaking news here on this Q's Countdown webisode. Syracuse basketball is on the bubble. Max Chadwick alongside Calvin Cristoforo and John Dale's here on a Q's Countdown webisode previewing the Syracuse and Notre Dame basketball game. And Calvin, I got to start with you on this one. If Syracuse is going to pick up another win to keep themselves in the hunt for the tournament, what do the Orange need to do?
Well, Max, it's
Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick alongside PJ Clark, Tate Sigworth, and Nick Merriam. Another very special guest coming on right now, Field Yates, who is an NFL insider for ESPN and co-host of the First Draft podcast with Todd McShay and Mel Kiper, and also the co-host of the Fantasy Focused Football podcast. Field, thanks so much for coming on, man.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's good to be here.
So we're going to ask you some questions first. So you're an NFL insider. The draft seems to be starting at 3. Trevor Lawrence seems to be locked into the Jaguars. Zach Wilson seems to be locked into the Jets. What do you think the 49ers are going to do with that 3rd overall pick?
Yeah, I think we know that it's going to be a quarterback.
Buddy and the Orange are back in action this Monday, taking on Duke. Reporting from the Carrier Dome, Jaron May, Citrus TV.
Talk about that Duke game, Jaron. Syracuse pulled off a thriller against Notre Dame. The only thing more thrilling than a 20-point comeback is a buzzer-beating 3 to win in front of a record 30,000-plus crowd. I don't know. That sounds a lot like what John Gillen did to Duke a few years ago. Well, the Orange get another shot against the Blue Devils exactly 4 years later to the very day. Is there more Cardiac Cuse magic in store? The Orange, 2-0 all-time on Mondays in Cameron Indoor. Didn't look like it'd be that way early on from the jump. DJ Stewart misses a 3. Jeremy Roach says, you know what, DJ, here, let me try. 8-2 Duke early. Later on, a Matthew Hurt rebound leads to a half-court alley-oop from Jordan Goldwire to Mark Williams. Duke bullying Syracuse right now. Dunk's so nice, though, they did it twice. Goldwire to Mark Williams again for the slam. 52 points for the Blue Devils in the first half, most all year. Late in the first, though, Buddy Boeheim misses. Kadari Richmond puts it back. SU still down 18 at the half. Stewart missed a 3 earlier. Here he is getting the old-fashioned 3 and 1 right there. Duke up 21. Syracuse looking for some life, though. Kadari Richmond finds Quincy Guerrier. He gives them some life. Syracuse down just 14 now. Stewart got an old-fashioned 3 earlier. Here he is getting one for the kids. A new fashion 3. He had a game-high 21 in this one. And in the battle of bubble teams, it's Duke who floats ahead while Syracuse pops. It was the first half that doomed Syracuse against Duke and almost doomed them against Notre Dame. In the last 2 games, Syracuse was outscored 98-66 in the opening frame. The Blue Devils and Fighting Irish combined to shoot 53% from 3 in the first half. Syracuse outscored both 80-54 in the second half, which was enough to beat Notre Dame, but not Duke. Next up for the Orange is a trip to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech in the final road game of the season. Anyway, last night was the 21st night of September, and I'm dancing the night away because Big Ten football is back. The B1G announced last week its plans to return football on October 24th, despite announcing in August that the fall season would be postponed. Each team will play an 8-game conference-only schedule in 8 weeks, leaving no wiggle room before the Big Ten championship game on December 19th, which is the day before the playoff teams are announced. Owen, were you surprised by how the Big Ten backtracked in this decision?
I'm not necessarily surprised. A couple of games. Maybe they'll change it up.
Absolutely. Let's move down south where a storm is brewing in the ACC. The Miami Hurricanes are 2-0 after beating number 24 Louisville in the Bluegrass State last Saturday. The Canes are currently ranked number 12 in the AP poll, their highest ranking since 2018. Owen, is it time to party like it's 2001?
regardless of the opponent.
So we know the final score, 21-10. Let's dive deeper on some of the key numbers that led to that result. First off, the number 7. Lucky for most people, not for Tommy DeVito. That's the number of times Pitt sacked him on Saturday. Now you may be saying to yourself, listen, Max, Pitt's got an outstanding pass rush. You know what? Fine, I'll give you that. But the offensive line also allowed 7 sacks against North Carolina, 7 sacks in the opener, 7 sacks in the second game. That obviously equals an average of 7 sacks allowed per game. That's the most in the country. This isn't a new issue either because last season, Syracuse allowed 4.5 sacks per game, which was the 3rd most in the country. The Orange are currently on pace to be a lot worse this season. Syracuse has allowed 14 sacks in 2 weeks. Speaking of 14, that was the percentage of 3rd downs the Orange converted on Saturday. SU was a measly 2 for 14 on 3rd down, and if you extend that even further to 4th down attempts, it gets even worse. Syracuse was 0 for 2 on 4th down tries, making them 2 for 16 on 3rd and 4th downs.
Program back from where it was, they were really dependent on the triple option. So I'm not 100% sold he's bringing him back. What I am sold on, though, is his nicknamed DJ Jazzy Jeff for the playlist that he plays during their practices. I'm all in on that.
Let's go to the other DJ Jazzy Jeff on Georgia Tech. That's quarterback Jeff Sims. Calvin, tell me about the true freshman.
He turned a lot of heads in his first couple starts as the head man at Georgia Tech.
Actually throw the ball away instead of hanging on to it for too long.
So John, as you know, the most popular player on a bad team is the backup quarterback. Syracuse's backup, Rex Culpepper, is pretty popular since he threw a 69-yard touchdown pass against Pitt for SU's only touchdown of the season. Now, Calvin, is it time to make the change from Tommy to Rex?
Max, if you were to draw a match made in heaven for the SU defense to set the offense up with some short fields.
So one area where Georgia Tech struggles is in the red zone. They've scored on only 56% of their red zone opportunities, which is 3rd worst in the ACC. Now, John Dales has more on what's gone wrong for the Yellow Jackets when they're 20 yards from pay dirt.
True freshman quarterback Jeff Sims might be Georgia Tech's best player on their roster. When they can take the ball away, Jeff Sims has to play smarter this week.
Thanks so much, John. Well, a lot has gone wrong for Syracuse this season. Who's to blame? We'll point the fingers and determine who's innocent and who's guilty in Countdown Courtroom. Don't go anywhere. Q's Countdown will be back right after this.
As kickoff nears closer, we go back down to Clemson. Max Chadwick and Owen Valentine also at the game for WAER Sports Talk. Guys, what does a good Syracuse performance look like today?
Well, Jenna, if they lose by less than 100, I'll say it's a success for Syracuse. But Owen, seriously though, what are you looking for out of the Orange today?
I think it all comes down to competing for Syracuse. You've had so much go against you so far in 2020. You lose your best offensive player. You lose your best defensive player. You start with a handful of bad losses. You've got to come out here today and say, you know what? Yes, Vegas says we're going to lose by 50. Who cares? We're going to come out here and say, let's go and compete. Let's try and show that we've still got some life left in us, and let's not write off all of 2020 today. Let's try and come out and show there are some silver linings so far for the Orange.
And you mentioned that you lose your best offensive player in Tommy DeVito. Now, all of a sudden, you lose maybe your second best offensive player in Taj Harris. What receivers are you looking forward to seeing maybe take over that role as a top wideout?
I mean, I don't even want to talk about receivers. I think if there was never a cry for help in terms of Sterling Gilbert utilizing the tight ends, it is today. Throw to Luke Benson, throw to Aaron Hackett, get them going, because your top 2 receivers right now, Nike Johnson, Anthony Quealy, they combined for over almost 150 yards fewer than Taj Harris has on the season, and they combined for fewer receptions than Taj Harris on the season.
Owen, I've called this out so many times. I hate to do it again. This could be the Ed Hendricks breakout game. I hate saying it, but it very well could be.
It's been the Ed Hendricks breakout game every game for 3 years, for as long as he's been here at Syracuse. And Max, the atmosphere right now is coming to life.
Oh, yeah.
Clemson's coming out right now. They're ready to run down the hill. The electricity in this stadium is coming. We've got a football atmosphere. Next, there's a football defense on the other side for Clemson.
Yeah, everyone wants to talk about Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, but they've got some dudes on that defense as well. Miles Murphy, who's a true freshman, one of the best edge rushers in the country already as a true freshman. The top recruit in the country, Brian Bresee, on that defensive line playing defensive tackle. Darion Kendrick, who in my opinion is the best corner in America right now for Clemson. So he's got a much easier task today with no Taj Harris today. But Owen, they also have a star linebacker, Balin Spector, Corey's more athletic brother. This is a Clemson defense that, yeah, the offense superstars are really, really good, but the defense is also tremendous.
Max, this defense is phenomenal. Everyone wants to talk about the big names on the offensive side. You just rattled off 4 names equally as big, maybe not as equally as big as Trevor Lawrence, the golden boy of college football right now, boomer bust #1 play. But when you look at this defense, you look at Razoo, you look at Murphy, you've got 2 top 10 freshmen on this defensive line. It's going to be a nightmare for Syracuse's O-line to work with. They've been building up. They're starting to look a little bit more cohesive, but this is a D-line that's got so many assets, so many big assets, so many quick assets. It's going to be tough for the Orange.
It's going to be really tough for the Orange, but I will say, Owen, Clemson's last regular season loss was to the Orange. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. If you want to follow along for our coverage, at Ostrom Avenue Pod for Owen, at WAR Sports Talk for us. Let's send it 850 miles north now to Jenna Fink to continue St. Joseph's Health countdown to kickoff.
How sweet it is. Syracuse advances to the Sweet 16 for the 3rd time in the last 5 tournaments, beating number 3 West Virginia 75-72. Max Chadwick alongside Chris Sachi here on the double overtime, taking you up until 9:30 tonight. But these aren't the only 2 voices we want to hear, man. Call in 315-443-2011. That is 315-443-2011, or tweet us at WAER Sports Talk. Sach, what an ending.
Electric ending.
To that game, man. What happened?
I mean, my heart's still beating, Max. Like you said, blacking out at the last point. Could they inbound the ball? Like, I feel like Syracuse still has an inbound left after that game because of how stressful they were. But just like this whole run for Syracuse, ever since the win against North Carolina last month, Buddy Boeheim has dug the team out of the hole, put them on his back. He has been the guy, and we'll get to that, but he punctuated the ending of this game because he's punctuated how this team is one of 16 teams left in Division I college basketball, which I would never believe just a few months ago.
Sach, you would have had to convince me about a month ago that they'd be one of the 16 teams left in the NIT. And now they're one of the 16 teams left in the NCAA tournament. Again, please call in 315-443-2011 or tweet us at WAER Sports Talk. But yeah, Sach, that end of that game, there was a point where West Virginia tied the game with about 6 minutes to go, and we kind of looked at each other and said, uh-oh.
Here it goes.
Because they were hot, and there was a point where Syracuse was ice cold as well, and then all of a sudden, the team came together. You know, last game, you could say, yeah, Buddy Boeheim put the team on his back. The whole team came together, and they fought tooth and nail and pulled out a gutsy victory.
And I said it last show, Max, about this team. And just give me a second here, folks, about all the adversity they've had this season. You think about the preseason right before opening night in that OT victory against Bryant. Why was it so close? A big factor is the 2-week COVID pause they have to endure, and they only get 1 practice in on Thanksgiving night before that game. A second COVID pause right smack in the middle after the holidays between Christmas and the New Year. Really, just another way to kick them out of their rhythm. Boeheim, that's Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard, contracted themselves. They've had issues with that. Also, so many big games at home. They could have played Louisville, Florida State. They didn't get the chance to do so. And yet somehow they've been gutsy enough to get it done. Max, all the adversity they've fought through this year, I think, is the reason why they're among the last 16 teams standing left in this tournament.
Absolutely. 315-443-2011. That is the phone number to call following Syracuse's 75-72 win over third-seeded West Virginia to advance to the Sweet 16. And, Chris, you mentioned the adversity, and that was kind of encapsulated in this game.
Yeah.
Where it was like they are punching you in the mouth. And Syracuse, yeah, they went down a couple times, but they got right back up and kept swinging. And that is what has embodied this team this whole year. You mentioned that Bryant victory, the 1-point victory against Bryant. We came on the air in double overtime and were like, okay.
This could be a long season.
It could be a long season. And we're like, okay, listen, you know, it was a lot of it to do with the COVID pause and all that, and we're kind of making excuses for them.
Yeah.
And then they lose to Rutgers. Like, all right, they're a good team. And then all of a sudden, Pitt just blows them out of the water in that second game.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this is probably, not a tournament team. Just like last year, before the season got canceled, you're like, probably not a tournament team.
Yeah.
When it comes to March, and it happened last year too, because they beat UNC, and who knows what they would have done in that ACC tournament. When the clock hits midnight, that turns from February to March, this is a completely different team, and that's what they were today, beating West Virginia 75-72 in what was a gutsy finish by so many players. Jesse Edwards got a big cut on his lip.
Yeah.
Marek Dolezaj had an ankle injury too. Didn't matter. They got up and they kept fighting. And you mentioned that Dolezaj putback.
Yeah.
That was so
Classic
critical.
Dolezaj. Yeah.
So critical. And I think that was one of the key plays in the end of this game.
I agree, Max, and that's just so vintage Dolezaj. He had a play earlier in the season just like it, where late game, you need an offensive rebound, you need something to get you going, and he does so. And I know we might sound a little cheesy here, so energized by such a great victory for Syracuse. Because like you said, Max, this team was up so big in the first half, and all of a sudden, West Virginia comes swinging. Bob Huggins with his second half adjustments. They made a couple of lineup changes and taking out Culver, the big man, Derek Culver, who coming into this game was a huge factor. He was only 1 of 7 in that first half. Their offense gets stretched out, but the team does just enough. And how about, like you said, Jesse Edwards stepping up and Bobby Braswell? I think that's been the biggest turning point of the season. It's always been for the past couple of years. SU has no bench. That's 2 bench guys along with Kadari Richmond that you can finally rely on to give you something out there, as Jim Boeheim would say. Just give me something. And they did as part of a collective team effort in such a narrow 3-point victory here to move on.
315-443-2011. That is the phone number to call here on the double overtime as Syracuse takes down West Virginia 75-72 to advance to the Sweet 16. And Chris, we mentioned it on the pregame, and I said the key to this game, if Buddy's not hot, which he turned it on in the second half, which we'll get to later on, but if he's not hot, you got to find the Robin to the Batman. It wasn't Alan Griffin. Joe Girard was for a period, but you found 3 Robins, I think, in that game. And Quincy Guerrier, Marek Dolezaj made some key buckets down the stretch, and Joe Girard. All 3 of them scored 12 points. And you can even throw in Robert Braswell, too, who put up 7 key moments in this game. They needed a secondary guy, and it wasn't just one guy. It was a multitude of guys that stepped up when they needed to. We're going to head to a break, but coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the man himself, Buddy Boeheim, who didn't look great in the first half, but man, oh man, he turned it on in that second half. That's coming up on the double overtime right here on the original home of the Orange, WAER.